moderator is David. Can you please give his objectives?
I would love to, Madam Toastmaster. Chris is speaking from Project 6, Vocal Variety from the Confident Communicator Manual. His objectives are to use voice volume, pitch, rate, and quality to reflect and add meaning and interest to his message, to use pauses to enhance his message, and to use vocal variety smoothly and naturally. His time is 5 to 7 minutes, and I am sure it will be a non-heinous speech.
Have you heard strange noises coming from inside your home? Ones that you have never heard before and have no idea where they come from? Chris has. Here he is to tell us about the noises he heard and what was causing them with his speech. What are those noises?
On an evening over 20 years ago, I was in my parents' house, and I heard noises that I had never heard before and never wanted to hear again. I was in my parents' computer room doing my homework. You could hear the clickety-clackety noise of the computer keyboard as I did my homework. My parents were watching television. You could hear the quiet roar of the television from their room just down the hall. Those were the only two noises that could be heard in the house. It was quiet, but it wasn't quiet for long. As I was typing, clickety-clackety, clickety-clackety, I heard the first noise. It sounded like the crunching and crashing and tearing of metal. But not on this side of the house, on another side of the house. It was a quiet roar, that tearing of metal. Within a few seconds of that happening, there was silence. But then again, that tearing and ripping of metal, once again, from another part of the house. What could this be? But my parents were home, I didn't worry about it. There was once again a slight pause. Then it sounded like a giant was taking his claws and ripping his hand across the sheetrock wall. But once again, it was a more dull sound. It sounded like it was coming from another part of the house. At this point, I had to get up to see what was happening. I ran to the hallway. There was my dad. I knew he wasn't the problem. I knew my mom wasn't the problem. She didn't follow him. What could this be? And we both looked at each other and headed for the living room. Once again, we heard this sound of like claws tearing against the sheetrock wall, but it was louder this time. It sounded like it was coming from the garage. We made our way through the house, through the kitchen, to the garage door. My dad reached for the knob and turned it. He opened the door, and the light was so bright that we couldn't look to see what was happening. There was a slight roar coming from that area as well. But soon it stopped. The light dimmed and the roar stopped. My dad opened the door more so that we could see. And there was the beast that had made the noise. A 1985 Ford LTD station wagon, and my sister behind the wheel. She had just come home from work and decided to try some advanced parking techniques in the garage. Have you ever tried to take a needle and a very thick thread and try to shove that thread through the eye of the needle? That's what my sister tried to do with that station wagon. The garage was a very tight area. There was a Suburban on this side of her and a workbench on this side. And trying to fit that station wagon into that spot was something that very few people could do. That crunching and tearing and ripping noise was her first attempt at getting into that garage. She took the bumper of that Ford LTD station wagon and ripped it and used it to tear the whole side of my dad's Suburban. And she's not a quitter. She decided to pull out. And when she did that, she ripped and teared the side of his Suburban again. And then paused and stopped in the driveway. As I said, she's not a quitter. She attempted it another time. This time, she headed more to the left side, where my dad's workbench was. And I think she gunned it going in this time, because she drove his workbench into the hot water heater. That sound of giants, where it sounded like they were tearing through the wall, was the sound of that workbench scraping the wall, and then her backing out, pulling that workbench back. It was an amazing sight to see, but there are some lessons that can be learned from something like this. One, if you're not an advanced driver, don't try advanced parking techniques. Number two, if you're in a situation where you've caused an error in your driving, stop! Don't continue in this effort. You're only going to cause yourself problems. Number three, if you're going to rearrange your garage, a motor vehicle, I can tell you, is not the way to take care of that issue.